أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم واذكر في الكتاب مريم إذ انتبذت من أهلها مكانا شرقيا فاتخذت من دونهم حجابا فأرسلنا إليها روحنا فتمثل لها بشرا سويا قالت إني أعوذ بالرحمن منك إن كنت تقيا قال إنما أنا رسول ربك لأهب لك غلاما زكيا قالت أنى يكون لي غلام ولم يمسسني بشر ولم أك بغيا قال كذلك قال ربك هو علي هين ولنجعله آية للناس ورحمة منا وكان أمرا مقضيا. So last week we had discussion in regards to Zakaria alayhi salatu wasalam, as well as his son Yahya alayhi salatu wasalam, and we stopped at where the surah starts to discuss Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam and her child, the Prophet of Allah, Isa ibn Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam. And the story of Zakaria is like a prelude to the story of Maryam and Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. So it's like an intro, it leads you to the next story. Allah Ta'ala says, and mention in the book, O Prophet of Allah, the tidings of Mary. Behold, she withdrew from her family to an eastern place. She withdrew from her family to an eastern place. So Allah Ta'ala mentions over here to mention and speak about Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam, who was she, talk about her. So it's befitting of us that before we move on, that we speak about Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam, who she was. So to speak about Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam, first we speak about her parents. Allah Ta'ala spoke about her parents, her father by the name Imran, and Imran's wife is mentioned in the Quran as well, Imran, the wife of Imran. And Ibn Kathir rahimahullah mentions her name as Hannah. Right? The story of these two pious people is that Imran himself was Sahibu Salati Bani Israel. He used to lead the Banu Israel in prayer. He would lead the Banu Israel in prayer. He was a pious person. His wife was also a pious woman. His wife was also a pious woman. They could not have children. They could not have children. And you know, these cycles of, you see Zakaria alayhi salatu wasalam, they could not have a child, and Allah Ta'ala brought a child. Family of Imran could not have a child, Allah Ta'ala brought a child. And before them, going back to their lineage, why? Because the lineage of Imran goes back to Sulaiman and Dawood. It goes back to Sulaiman and Dawood alayhi salatu wasalam. And that goes back to, of course, Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. That Allah Ta'ala then as well, Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, in his family there was no child, and then Allah Ta'ala brought up a child. Right? All of these, the Mufassirun mentioned that in these circumstances which the parents did not have much of a thought that a child would come about, Allah Ta'ala brought a child. And all of these circumstances are then going to act as a prelude to the most miraculous birth on the face of earth, the birth of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. So all of these happened right before Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, and they are a prelude to his miraculous birth. So the wife of Imran, she, as Ibn Kathir rahimahullah and other ulama mentioned, she saw a bird feed its child. When the bird fed the child, the wife of Imran wished that she had children as well. And Shah Waliullah rahimahullah, one of the scholars, he actually mentions as well that this was a practice of ancient doctors as well, that they would tell people who, and this is just an info of their time, that they would tell people of who could not have children that look at the birds or the animals taking care of their offspring, and it would inspire you. However this had happened, Allah Ta'ala wished for them that they have a child, and she was able to have a child, and Allah Ta'ala gave them the capacity to have one. When she started to bear the child, she said to Allah Ta'ala, إِنِّي نَذَرْتُ لَكَ مَا فِي بَطْنِي مُحَرَّرًا فَتَقَبَّلْ مِنِّي. That I have taken an oath upon what is in my stomach, upon the child in my stomach. I have taken an oath that it be muharraran, free from me. Muharraran fataqabbal minni, free from me, liberated from me. What does this mean, muharraran, free from me or liberated from me? When you have a child, when a person has a child, the main thing that they want to do is take care of the child, keep the child. If you're a person of, Indian, Pakistani culture, then your child never leaves the house. Your child never leaves the house. So Allah Ta'ala is teaching through the messengers, through these blessed people, that your children are what? Not here only to serve you. Rather, if you want them to serve the deen of Allah, and if you want them to bring change, then you have to sacrifice them. You have to sacrifice them. And the greatest of mothers, this is what they did when they understood this. You look at the mother of Imam Shafi'i, the mother of Imam Bukhari. They alone raised great men, right? And this is a sign as well that a woman can alone raise in a very good environment, can raise a successful child. She can do so. And that the tarbiyah, the Islamic tarbiyah upbringing, relies on the mother. It relies on the mother. And there's a working behind the system which will be mentioned when you acknowledge, because Allah Ta'ala speaks about Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam, the wife of Imran, and what the power of the mother is in the child, behind the veil. Behind the veil. So because this was a pious woman, she said that, I take an oath that my child would be free from me and in the service and devoted to Allah Ta'ala. It was a practice of their time that the children of their time, specifically the boys, that the people would sacrifice their child by sending them to the Bayt al-Maqdis, the Masjid of Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam. They would go there and they would devote their life there, right? The ummah at the time, they were not like our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the sense that they were given rahbaniyah, right? The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had said, La rahbaniyata fil Islam, that there's no rahbaniyah in our practice of the deen. At their time they had what was rahbaniyah in the sense that they secluded themselves in the masjid and they devoted themselves to worship, and they only exited the masjid when they needed to, when they wanted certain dunyawi needs that they had. So she made an oath that this child would be for Allah Ta'ala's sake. Now when the time came that she gave birth, Allah Ta'ala said in Surah Al Imran, وَلَمَّا وَضَعْتْهَا قَالَتْ رَبِّ إِنِّي وَضَعْتُهَا أُنْثَى وَاللَّهُ أَعْلَمُ بِمَا وَضَعَتْ وَلَيْسَ الذَّكَرُ كَالْأُنْثَى وَإِنِّي سَمَيْتُهَا مَرْيَمَ وَإِنِّي أُعِيذُهَا بِكَ وَذُرِّيَّتَهَا مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ. That when she gave birth, فَلَمَّا وَضَعَتْهَا. Now look at the strength of the woman. Allah Ta'ala speaking about when she gave birth. This is at that time, right? At that time. There's no drugs that are being given to this woman to ease the pain. But look at her composure and her collection of herself. That when this happened, she started to make dua. She started to make dua. That, oh Allah, I have given birth to a daughter. And this wasn't to challenge the qadr of Allah. Rather, this is in submission to the qadr of Allah. That, oh Allah, I have given birth to a daughter. However, I was thinking, it would have been like, however I might have thought it would have been, but you made it that I gave birth to a daughter, and you will still make this child to serve you. This is a great lesson for us. Why? Because Muslims don't challenge qadr, we don't challenge taqdeer. We use taqdeer to recreate and to change the world. So we're not passive with taqdeer. This is something very important to understand. That when we say that we submit to the taqdeer, the will of Allah, that doesn't mean that we're just, slaughtering ourselves and nothing is going to happen, right? Rather, submitting our will is so that we don't interfere with the divine will of Allah. When we do not interfere with the divine will of Allah, then marvelous things happen. Then marvelous things happen when Allah Ta'ala is the one who's doing all the work for you. And so she submits, she shows complete submission to Allah Ta'ala, that وَضَعْتُهَا أُنْثَى. And now the Mufassirun then differentiate that in the ayah, that what's next, is it the statement of Allah or is it the statement of her? One of the Mufassirun mentions that it's her own statement. She says, وَاللَّهُ أَعْلَمُ بِمَا وَضَعَتْ, that and Allah knows best of what she, referring to herself, has given birth to. Meaning that there's no need to doubt the qadr of Allah again, right? Just because, maybe in my understanding it's a daughter and it won't work and she will not, Allah Ta'ala will still take great work from her. Allah Ta'ala will still accept this daughter and take great work from her for the sake of Allah. وَلَيْسَ الذَّكَرُ كَالْأُنْثَى. And now she makes a very important and universal statement, which in our modern day would be problematic. But we hold on to it and it's a part of our deen. And this is something which, however, changed, a lot of change came in the European society. People of the Christian sect should hold on to this as well. Why? Because this is the grandmother of Jesus, the grandmother of Isa ﷺ speaking, saying what? That the male is not like the female. The male is not like the female. Allah Ta'ala takes work from both the male and the female in ways befitting to them. The way that the male will bring change to the world is different than the way the female will bring change to the world, and this is important to understand. And their acts for society, or the way they are within society, their roles should not be equal. Should not be equal. And this form of equality, which is completely deconstructed nowadays, is not what we understand. Is not what we hold in our deen. And this is very, beautifully mentioned by the wife of Imran over here, that the male is not like the female. And so we should not then force our understanding of how change is going to come. So if society gives a certain understanding, you have to be loud and you have to be aggressive and you have to be an activist and you have to do this, right? That's not necessarily our motto for change, of how change is going to happen, right? If that's how certain men are doing it, that doesn't have to necessarily mean that the women have to do it that way either as well, right? Allah Ta'ala has given roles to both, and when both will follow their roles and when both will do it the way these people did it, then Allah Ta'ala will grant good guidance. And we'll speak about Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam as well. So So then, and she named the daughter Maryam, وَإِنِّي سَمَيْتُهَا مَرْيَمْ وَإِنِّي أُعِيذُهَا بِكَ وَذُرِّيَّتَهَا. Now, when devoting ourselves or our children to the deen, right, we cannot only rely on ourselves. We know that we wouldn't be able to do it successfully. So what did she do right away? She made dua for her child to be protected. Her child and the progeny of her child be protected from who? Shaitan the accursed. From Shaitan the accursed, because it doesn't matter which masjid you are in or where you are, Shaitan and his waswasa, his whisper will come and it will take you off the right path. So the Prophet ﷺ said that two people, that Shaitan comes upon the birth of every child and touches that child or pokes that child, which causes the child to cry, except for two people, Maryam and Isa alayhim as-salatu wasalam. So this was the desire of this mother, that she made dua upon the birth of the child, upon that state of giving birth, that Allah Ta'ala protect the child and the progeny from Shaitan. Now, when the child was born, then they took the child to the temple, upon which the pious people they recognized the child, and they recognized why the child is here, and they decided to allocate for this child a separate portion in the temple by which the child would live. Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam did not go into the masjid, into the place of worship when she was 5 or 6. It was right after birth. It was right after birth. And then they assigned a person as a caretaker. Allah Ta'ala speaks about how the caretaker was assigned for Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam as well. Allah Ta'ala said, وَكَفَّلَهَا زَكَرِيَّا. The Zakaria alayhi salatu wasalam was the caretaker of Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam. And Allah Ta'ala says that, for us to remember, Allah Ta'ala said in the Quran, that, and you were not there when the pens were thrown, when they threw the pens. Referring to how it happened. Ibn Kathir rahimahullah narrates, and others as well narrate, that all of the pious people of the masjid wanted to take care of Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam. So they decided to have people draw lots. And so then all of the people gathered pens and they put them together. Right? Zakaria alayhi salatu wasalam was a prophet, not only a prophet but a relative. Right? There are two opinions. He was either married to the aunt or the sister of Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam. So they gathered their pens in one place and they asked a child who was young, had not reached puberty, still innocent, to come and take a pen. The child chose a pen, and the pen was the pen of Zakaria alayhi salatu wasalam. After which they said, no, let's try something again. So then they said, let's throw the pens in the water. And so there'll be flowing water. The pen that goes against the current is going to be the pen that we will take. So they threw the pens in the water. The pen of Zakaria alayhi salatu wasalam went against the current. Then they threw the pens again and they said, this time the pen that goes with the current will be the pen that is taken. All of the pens went against the current and the pen of Zakaria alayhi salatu wasalam went with the current. Upon which Zakaria alayhi salatu wasalam was decided to be the caretaker of Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam. Allah Ta'ala said, remember Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam in the book, she withdrew from her family to an eastern place. Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam was given an eastern place from the masjid, and she was given the, what's also known as a mihrab, a secluded area for Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam. And she lived in that area, and she was given rizq in that area by the rizq of Allah Ta'ala, as it comes in the Quran, that Zakaria alayhi salatu wasalam would enter the room, and she would have fruits of the winter in the summer and fruits of the summer in the winter. Now, when Zakaria alayhi salatu wasalam saw this, and we mentioned this last week, this is what inspired him to make dua to Allah Ta'ala, that, oh Allah, give me a son. Ibn Kathir rahimahullah narrates very beautifully that he made dua that, oh, the one who is granting fruit when it's not time for its ripening, when it's not time for the fruit to be ripened, grant me a child when it's not it's not the time for me to have a child. It's not the time for me to have a child. And so he made that dua inspired by Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam. Allah Ta'ala said, فَاتَّخَذَتْ مِن دُونِهِمْ حِجَابًا. And she placed a veil between herself and them. There was a veil that was separating her from the rest of the people. Now, this is again very important. Why Allah Ta'ala mentions that she is separate, right? And that the role of the woman within society be somewhat separate. This is a part of our deen as well. And this doesn't mean that the woman will not play her role within society. Again, she kept herself chaste. Right? Allah Ta'ala in the end of Surah Tahrim spoke about a khulasa, a summary of what she did with her life. وَمَرْيَمَ بِنَةَ عِمْرَانَ الَّتِي أَحْصَنَتْ فَرْجَهَا. The daughter of Imran, Maryam, who protected her chastity. وَصَدَّقَتْ بِكَلِمَاتِ رَبِّهِ. And she accepted the orders of Allah Ta'ala, وَكُتُبِهِ, and His books. وَكَانَتْ مِنَ الْقَانِتِينَ. And she was from the devout worshippers. This is what she did. People think that if you're not coming out within society to make change, then you will not make change. But the fact of the matter is that in our deen, No person will make change unless they are themselves pushing themselves toward change. If you are not pushing yourself to be a devout worshipper, then you will not cause any change within society. This is how it works within our deen. We don't believe in a dunyawi system that you raise your voice and things will happen. No. You have to push yourself first. You have to be chaste. You have to hold on to your deen. And Allah Ta'ala spoke about this quality of Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam, which was her desire to be free from any accusations, as well as to be pure in this world. And when she was like this, then she gave birth to Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, right? Then she was able to give birth to such a child, right? You have to be good yourself. So Allah Ta'ala said, فَاتَّخَذَتْ مِن دُونِهِمْ حِجَابًا, that she placed a veil between herself and them. فَأَرْسَلْنَا إِلَيْهَا رُوحَنَا فَتَمَثَّلَ لَهَا بَشَرًا سَوِيًّا. Then we sent to her our spirit, the angel Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam, who thus appeared to her as a flawless human being. Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam came in the form of a handsome man, right? And this was so that she wouldn't be frightened. Had she saw Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam in his pure or original form, she would have been extremely frightened. But even upon seeing the handsome man, what was her reaction? قالت إني أعوذ بالرحمن منك إن كنت تقيا. She said, I seek refuge from you in Allah the All-Merciful, if at all you be God-fearing. If at all you be God-fearing. Right? The quality of a person who cares about their chastity, who cares about their purity, is that when the opposite gender will come in front of them, they don't go forward, they take a step back. Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam, the Mufassirun say that she fell back when she saw Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam. And right away, what is the first thing that she did? She sought refuge and protection from Allah Ta'ala. She sought refuge and protection from Allah Ta'ala. And then she reminded the person in front of her as well, that if you are a person of taqwa, then act upon your taqwa. Act upon your taqwa. Don't have any desire to commit sin. So she protected herself by making dua, and by asking the name the Rahman. There's a reason for this as well. Why ask the Rahman? Generally when we think Rahman, we think the one who gives, the one who's generous, right? To gain the rahmah of the Rahman, you have to be protected from sin. So you ask the Rahman protect you from sin so that you can gain the blessings of the name Rahman. How am I going to gain the blessings of Rahman if I have sinned, right? You have to be pure, you have to be a person of tawbah, istighfar, then you'll come close to Rahman, and Rahman will give you, right? So for this reason, to ask for protection from sin, to gain the rahmah of Allah, she calls upon Ar-Rahman, the most merciful, the Rahman. Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam says, قَالَ إِنَّمَا أَنَا رَسُولُ رَبِّكَ. He says, I indeed myself am none other than a messenger of your Lord, to grant you a pure boy. لِأَهَبَ لَكِ غُلَامًا زَكِيًّا. To gift you a pure boy. The word ahaba, wahab, hiba, signifies that it's going to be a special birth. It's not going to be ordinary. She says, قَالَتْ أَنَّا يَكُونُ لِي غُلَامٌ وَلَمْ يَمْسَسْنِي بَشَرٌ وَلَمْ أَكُ بَغِيًّا. She said, how shall I have a boy while no human being has ever touched me, nor have I ever been unchaste? Now this is not again questioning the power of Allah. Right? The same way the Zakaria alayhi salatu wasalam had raised a question about his weakness and how his wife was barren. It wasn't to question the power of Allah, rather it was for a different reason. Now the approach of the two are different though. When Zakaria alayhi salatu wasalam asked, he asked desiring a child. Rather when Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam was asking, she actually was asking with the intention that she didn't desire a child. She didn't want a child. And the reason, right, is later on mentioned. But as she mentions that no person has ever touched me, meaning in a halal nikah, no man has ever come near me, has never touched me. And when it comes to an impermissible relationship, nor have I partook in any impermissible relationship. Now, obviously, when that's the case, and people know that you have been secluded in the masjid, then what's going to happen? People will accuse you. And this was the fear of Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam, that she will be accused and that there will be difficulties that will come about the situation. Upon which Allah Ta'ala says, قَالَ كَذَلِكَ, that upon this exact state, that Allah Ta'ala will keep your purity and chastity, and that Allah Ta'ala will not allow anyone to touch you. Allah Ta'ala will allow you to give birth to a child. قَالَ رَبُّكِ هُوَ عَلَيَّ هَيِّنٌ, and Allah Ta'ala will make all of it easy, meaning when having the child, and when after having the child and standing up to the child, Allah Ta'ala will make it all easy. وَلِنَجْعَلَهُ آيَةً لِلنَّاسِ وَلِنَجْعَلَهُ آيَةً لِلنَّاسِ وَرَحْمَةً مِنَّا وَكَانَ أَمْرًا مَقْضِيًّا. The angel said, even so shall it be, your Lord has said, it is for me, for we shall make him a miraculous sign. We shall make him a miraculous sign for all people, and a mercy from us. And a mercy from us. Thus it is a matter decreed. This has been a matter already decided and decreed by Allah Ta'ala. Now, how did it happen? The Mufassirun, the ulama, they mentioned that Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam, without coming even near to the Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam, he blew, within which that blow either went into her sleeve, or however it went into the womb, and that a child was born. Now, they differ whether she gave birth within that child after just 1 hour, or after the period of 9 months, right? And both ulama on both sides have opinions and reasons why, without going into the details of that. And then inshallah next week we continue from when she has birth, the birth of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, and then there's discussion about Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. To speak a little more about Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam though, there's an interesting discussion between the ulama, which is that was she a prophet or not? Was Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam a prophet or not? And the fact of the matter is that within the Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, there is a group of the Ash'ari school which they used to say that she was perhaps a prophet. Now again, when the ulama discussed whether she was a prophet or not, none of it had to do with, okay, is she a female or is she a male? None of that matters, right? None of that matters. We don't care whether a person's a male or a female in front of Allah Ta'ala. If Allah wants to use them, then it doesn't really matter, right? That's part of the moral of the story of Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam, that despite males being used within the society, Allah Ta'ala used a female, and how greatly Allah Ta'ala used her. What the ulama looked at was proofs within the Quran. Allah Ta'ala used the word wahi in different places. That, for example, وَأَوْحَيْنَا, and the same word was used for the mother of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, for example, وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَىٰ أُمِّ Musa, that we gave wahi to the mother of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. The other group of scholars, they say that Allah Ta'ala said, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِن قَبْلِكَ إِلَّا رِجَالًا نُوحِي, that we haven't sent before you except men who we have given birth to. And the fact that there is another ayah in the Quran which Allah Ta'ala said that when speaking to the Nasara, the Christians, that Isa alayhi salatu wasalam is just a prophet and a servant of Allah Ta'ala, and the son of Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam, and that his mother Ummuhu Siddiqah, his mother was a true and very strong believing woman, so she had a very high level of status, perhaps not a prophet, even if she wasn't a prophet. Now, the Prophet ﷺ praised her as well. The Prophet ﷺ said that to Fatima radiallahu anha, that you are the Sayyida, you are the leader of the women in Jannah except for Maryam bint Imran, except for Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam. Allah Ta'ala said, speaking about Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam, that istafaki ala nisa'il alameen, that Allah Ta'ala has chosen you upon all the women of the world, all the women of the world. And now then, within this discussion, then the ulama will speak in detail, is it possible that she was better than every other woman? Or is it possible that, other women can come before her, for example, Khadija radiallahu anha, and there's a lot of discussion within that. But the fact of the matter is that she was a very high, pious woman, and it was through her seclusion and through her piety that she gave birth to this child, Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, and that she was a great mother, and that her tarbiyah, which was given to the child, was given through what? Dua. Was given through dua. The mother of Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam and Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam, they both unlocked the door of dua. That's what they had, which was able to make them different from any others. They were able to make dua to Allah Ta'ala and gain the mercy of Allah. They were able to gain the mercy of Allah Ta'ala. And that's how change comes. That's how change comes. Allah Ta'ala give us understanding of this. Sadaqallahu al-azim, subhanallah bihamdihi, subhanakallah bihamdik, nashhadu la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka Allahumma wa natubu ilayk.